My coach drives me home after practice, and that night changed everything. He was my coach, older, confident, way out of my league, and yet, that night when everyone else had already left the field, he offered to drive me home. I didn't think twice. I got into his truck, and nothing was ever the same again, because on that ride home, something unspoken happened. Something I still don't have the words for. If you've ever been confused by a glance, frozen in a moment, or felt your heart race just from silence, you're not ready for what happened next. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay until the very end, because what started as a ride home turned into a moment that changed everything. The field lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the empty bleachers. Everyone had gone home already except me. I was tying my shoelaces a little slower than usual, pretending I still had something to do, when in reality I just wasn't ready to go back to the silence of my apartment. Coach Miller was standing by his truck, arms crossed, his cap pulled low over his brow. He had that kind of presence that made you stand up straighter without even realizing it. He wasn't intimidating, not in a bad way, just commanding, the kind of man who didn't need to say much to be heard. "You still waiting on your ride?" he asked, walking over, his boots crunching softly on the gravel. I hesitated. "No ride, I usually walk." He tilted his head slightly, as if that answer didn't sit well with him. "It's almost 9. You live far?" "Just past Jefferson, 15-20 minutes." He nodded slowly. "Get in, I'll drop you off." I froze, not because I was scared. Coach Miller wasn't the type to make you feel unsafe. It was more that I'd never been alone with him like this before. On the field, in the gym, in the locker room, yeah. But in his truck after dark, that was different. That was personal. Still, I didn't want to make it weird. "Sure. Thanks." His truck smelled like leather and something faintly woodsy, maybe his cologne. He had one of those classic dashboards with faded buttons and a radio that only played country. I sat stiffly, unsure of what to do with my hands, and tried not to let my eyes drift toward him too much. We drove silence at first. I kept stealing glances at his profile, the sharp line of his jaw, the faint shadow of stubble, his hands on the steering wheel, strong and calloused. I'd noticed them before during practice, how they moved when he demonstrated a technique or clapped a player's back in encouragement. "You've been pushing hard lately," he said suddenly. I looked at him, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "I see it," he said, eyes still on the road. "You stay late, you run drills even after I blow the whistle. You've got something on your chest." I swallowed, just trying to keep up. He gave a short laugh. "You've got nothing to prove. You're solid." Those two words, "you're solid," landed differently. I wasn't used to hearing things like that, especially from someone like him. My dad had never said them. Most teachers didn't notice me, but Coach Miller did. "Thanks," I said, softer than I meant. We turned onto my street, the familiar curve of houses sliding past. I didn't want the drive to end. It was ridiculous, I know. But sitting beside him in that quiet cab, with the hum of the engine and the occasional tap of his fingers on the wheel, felt safe, almost too safe. He pulled up in front of my building and shifted into park. "You good?" he asked, turning to face me, our eyes locked. I nodded, but something in my chest felt tight. "Yeah, thanks for the ride." I reached for the door handle but stopped when I heard him say, "You ever need to talk about anything, you can." My hand froze. I looked back at him. "Even if it's not about football?" I asked, half joking, half serious. "Especially if it's not about football," he replied. The way he said it, it wasn't casual. It wasn't something you throw out just to be nice. It was open, intimate even. I didn't know what came over me, but I stayed there, my hand off the handle, now my body angled slightly toward him. "Coach," I started, not even sure what I wanted to say, but just then a car pulled up behind us, headlights flooding the interior of the truck. It broke the moment clean in half. "I should go," I muttered. He nodded. "Night, kid." I got out and shut the door behind me, walking slowly to the steps of my building. I didn't look back until I heard the rumble of his engine pulling away, and when I did, he was still watching me. The next day at practice, I tried to act like everything was normal. I tied my cleats, stretched with the guys, ran my drills, same as always, but I felt it. That tension, that weight in the air. Like a song I couldn't get out of my head. Every time I looked over at Coach Miller, my chest tightened. He was the same as always, focused, controlled, his voice cutting through the wind as he barked out plays and instructions, but I wasn't the same. That drive home had done something to me, or maybe just confirmed something I'd been trying not to admit. It wasn't just admiration I felt for him, it wasn't just respect, it was something deeper, something closer to need. After practice, I lingered again, grabbing a water and pretending to check my phone while the others slowly filtered out. I knew it was stupid, but part of me hoped he'd offer another ride. He didn't, he just gave me a nod and walked past, towel over his shoulder, headed toward the staff lot. That should have been the end of it, but then he paused. You left your hoodie in my truck, he said, turning halfway back toward me. I blinked. Oh right, I didn't even realize. He didn't say anything else, just waited. I followed him, heart feuding in my chest like it wanted out. We didn't talk as we walked. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable exactly. It was charged. I was hyper aware of every sound, the crunch of gravel under our shoes, the breeze rustling the trees, the distant whistle of another coach on a nearby field. When we reached his truck, he opened the passenger side and handed me the hoodie. Our hands brushed just slightly, but it was enough. My fingers clenched around the fabric. I could still smell the inside of his truck on it, leather, cologne. Thanks, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. He leaned against the side of the truck, arms crossed. You all right? I nodded quickly, too quickly. Yeah, just tired. He tilted his head, little, studying me. You sure that's all it is? I felt my throat tighten. My instinct was to deflect, to joke, to say something dumb, like what else would it be, but instead I stood there, hoodie clutched to my chest, and met his eyes. You said last night I could talk to you about anything, I said, barely above a whisper. He didn't look away. I meant it. I looked down at the hoodie in my hands, trying to find the words. I don't know what's wrong with me, I began, voice shaking slightly. I keep thinking about stuff I probably shouldn't, stuff that doesn't make sense. He didn't interrupt, didn't push, just waited. I think I feel things, I continued, things I'm not supposed to feel about someone. When I looked up again, his expression had changed, softer, more guarded, but not shocked, not angry. Who told you you're not supposed to? He asked. I shrugged, eyes burning. I don't know. Everyone, my dad's school, church, whatever. It's like this thing in my chest I keep trying to bury, but every time I see him it just comes back. Silence again, a long one. Then he said, I've been where you are. I looked at him, startled. He nodded slowly. That feeling like you're stuck between who you are and who the world expects you to be. Yeah. Lived it. I wanted to ask 100 questions, but I couldn't speak. My head was spinning. I can't tell you what to feel, he added, but I can tell you it's not wrong. You're not wrong. Something cracked open in me. Then, not all the way, but just enough to let the light in, and just as I was about to say something back, something honest, something I'd never said out loud before, we heard footsteps approaching, fast, loud, too close. Coach straightened. I spun around. One of the assistant coaches was walking toward us, clipboard in hand, clearly not expecting to see the two of us standing so close. Everything all right here? He asked, eyebrows raised. Coach's voice was steady. Yeah, just giving him something he left in the truck. The man nodded, but the way his eyes moved between us made something inside me go cold. I mumbled a quick goodbye and turned away, walking back toward the gym, heart pounding in my ears. Something had shifted, and now someone else might have seen it too. After that afternoon by Coach Miller's truck, I felt different. It wasn't just the fact that I'd come so close to saying the words out loud, it was that someone else might have seen it. The way the assistant coach looked at us like we were doing something wrong stuck with me the rest of the night. I didn't Sleep much every time I closed my eyes. I replayed the conversation over and over, his voice saying, "You're not wrong." That kept echoing, but so did the way he suddenly pulled back when someone approached, like a door was starting to open and then slammed shut. Again, the next few days I tried to avoid him, not because I didn't want to see him, God, I wanted to, but because I didn't know how to look him in the eye. Without showing everything I felt, I was afraid of what he might say or what he might not say. He didn't push, he kept his distance. On the field, he treated me like every other player, no extra glances, no lingering words, just good run, Maddox, or watch your left side. That was it. It hurt more than I expected. By Friday, I couldn't take it anymore. After practice, while the others were changing, I lingered outside the weight room, heart hammering in my chest. I didn't have a plan, I just needed to see him. I waited until I heard his voice through the cracked door, low, calm, talking to one of the assistant coaches. I hesitated, then stepped back. I was about to turn around and leave when I heard his voice call out, "Maddox." I froze. He'd seen me through the glass. "You need something?" he asked, stepping into the hallway, arms crossed again like he always did when he was trying to read someone. I nodded slowly. "Can we talk?" He glanced toward the room, then back to me. "Give me 5 minutes." I waited outside, tried not to let my legs shake. When he came back out, he didn't say a word, just motioned with his head and started walking. We ended up in the equipment shed behind the field, quiet, empty, the perfect place not to be seen. He closed the door behind us. Smell of rubber and old gear filled the air. "What's on your mind?" he asked. "I can't stop thinking about it," I said. "About what I almost said, about what you said." He'd respond, "Just let me speak. I felt like this for a while." I went on, "Like there's this version of me that I'm hiding from everyone, from my friends, my family, even myself, but when I'm around you, I swallowed. It's harder to pretend." A muscle in his jaw twitched. "Look," he said carefully, "you're young, you're figuring yourself out, that's okay. But you need to be careful with this." "With me?" "Why?" I asked. "Because you're my coach, because this isn't simple," he said, his voice lower now. "Because I have to think about more than just how I feel." That word "feel" wasn't lost on me. I stepped closer. "You do feel something." He didn't deny it, didn't confirm it either, just looked at me like he was weighing the consequences of every breath. Then quietly he said, "You make it hard, Maddox." My breath caught. He stepped back like he regretted saying it, ran a hand through his hair. "I shouldn't have said that, but you did," I said, trying not to let my voice crack. "I've worked too hard to screw this up for me, for you." I took another step forward. There was barely a foot of space between us. Now I could feel the tension like static between our bodies. "Do you ever think about it?" I asked. "What would happen if you stopped pushing it down?" His eyes searched mine. "Every damn day." I didn't know what possessed me then. Maybe it was the build-up, or the way the light caught in his eyes, or just the ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. But I reached out and brushed the back of his hand. He didn't pull away. He looked down at our hands, then slowly, his fingers curled into mine, and just as my breath hitched and I thought, "This is real, it's finally happening," we heard the sharp crack of the equipment shed door handle jiggling. Someone was outside trying to get in. The handle rattled again. We froze. His fingers slipped from mine instantly. Like contact itself had become dangerous. He took 2 steps back. I stepped sideways, pretending to inspect a helmet on the shelf. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought whoever was outside would hear it. Then the door creaked open. It was Jamal, one of the assistant trainers. Early 20s, cool guy, didn't talk much, but was always around after practice. He raised his brows when he saw us inside. "Oh, sorry," he said, glancing between us. "Didn't know anyone was in here." Coach cleared his throat, voice calm. "Just grabbing some inventory." Maddox was helping. Jamal nodded. "All good. They wanted you in the office, coach. Something about next week's tournament." "Thanks, I'll be there in 5. Jamal gave a quick wave and closed the door behind him, the latch clicking back. Into place, silence again, but it wasn't. The silence from before, now it was. Jagged tight, coach turned to me, jaw tense. This can't happen again, he said. Voice low, I blinked, the sting behind my eyes catching me off guard. Why you? No, why? Because of him, I asked. Because he saw us standing near each other in a room, because I almost forgot who I'm supposed to be. I swallowed hard, so I'm a mistake now. He ran a hand down his face. Exhaling, that's not what I said, but it's what you meant. No, he snapped. Then lowered his voice again. No. Maddox, you're not a mistake, but this is a situation I can't control. I don't want to be the reason your name ends up in some rumor mill or worse on a report. He looked exhausted, not just physically, like he was fighting himself. In every word he spoke, I tried to breathe through the knot forming in my throat. So what are you saying? I'm saying we keep our distance. No more late talks, no more rides. You've got a future, don't let it get clouded because of me. I wanted to shout or cry or both, but I just nodded numb. I left the shed without another word. Didn't look back. The following week was a blur. Practice, school, practice again. Coach Miller barely looked my way. He didn't avoid me completely, but the shift was obvious. He spoke to me only when necessary, short-clipped instructions, the warmth that used to linger in his voice gone. I couldn't focus on anything. I fumbled plays I usually nailed. I skipped dinner 2 nights in a row. I felt like I was floating outside of myself, watching the days pass without meaning. And then just when I thought I was starting to get a grip again, something else happened. A letter in my locker. No name, no handwriting. I recognized just one line. You and Coach Miller seemed close. People are starting to notice. My blood went cold. I looked around the locker room like I was suddenly being watched. No one seemed suspicious, just guys joking around, changing, texting, heading out. But the note in my hand was real, and whoever wrote it knew. I crumpled it up and shoved it deep in my bag, pretending nothing was wrong, but everything was wrong. I couldn't concentrate. I didn't know who to trust, and worse, I didn't know if Coach had gotten something like it too. I waited until practice ended and followed him to his truck, not too close, just enough to catch him before he left. Coach, I called out. He turned surprised. Maddox, we need to talk. His eyes scanned the lot, empty except for a few cars. Get in, he said, unlocking the passenger side. We sat in silence for a moment before I reached into my bag and pulled out the note, handed it to him. Without a word, he read it, didn't react right away, then folded it carefully and placed it on the dash. I figured this would happen eventually, he said. You think someone's watching us? I think someone's guessing, and that's already dangerous enough. What do we do? He looked over at me, really looked at me. For the first time in days, I don't know, and that was the first time I'd ever heard fear in his voice. After that night in his truck, things didn't go back to normal, but they didn't fall apart either. Coach Miller didn't avoid me like before. His eyes met mine again, cautiously, and I noticed things, little things, the way he stayed longer on the field after everyone left, the way he hesitated before calling out to me, way he lingered at the end of practice, like he wanted to say something but didn't. I kept the note hidden. I didn't tell anyone, but the weight of it was always there. A week later, after our final scrimmage, he called me over while everyone was heading to the locker room. I could feel eyes on us, could feel the tension, but I followed him anyway. We stood by the edge of the bleachers, far enough away from everyone else. My heart was pounding again, like it always did around him. I've been thinking about what you said, he began, keeping his voice low, about pushing things down. I swallowed. Yeah, I've been doing that my whole life. He looked away down at the field. His voice grew softer. I've loved this job, the structure, the rules, the safety, and being invisible. Then he looked back at me. But you came in and made all of it feel small. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I still don't know what I'm allowed to feel, he admitted, but I know what I want to feel. And that's different. I took a step closer, then feel it. He hesitated just For a breath, and then he reached out and touched my hand again, just a touch. Not hidden this time, not rushed and not afraid. We didn't kiss that night, we didn't rush anything, but something changed. The wall between us didn't just crack, it came down quietly. Slowly, like the truth had finally gotten too heavy to carry. Alone for the first time in weeks, I felt calm, not because everything was fixed or because we had all the answers, but because we weren't hiding from ourselves anymore. After everyone left, we sat on the back of his truck, legs swinging, the night air cool against our skin. I used to think I had to be someone else. I told him to survive, to be accepted. He nodded. Me too. There was a silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was grounding. I'm still scared, I admitted. So am I, he said, but being afraid isn't a reason to run anymore. I looked at him, really looked. The coach I used to admire from a distance, the man who once felt untouchable, was human now, flawed, brave, just like me. Is this going to get us in trouble? I asked. Maybe, he said honestly, but I'd rather live with the risk than regret never being honest. We didn't need a label, we didn't need to explain it to anyone yet. What we had, what was starting, belonged to us. And that night when he dropped me off again, I didn't rush out of the truck. I stayed a second longer, looked at him, smiled, and he smiled